Let's look at our first participant in workplace relations. That is employees and trade unions. So you might be an employee while you're at school, but it's not likely that you're probably a member of a union. So what is that? Well, to answer what that is, we kind of need to go back a step and go, well, what's the difference in power of an individual employee versus a group of employees? So let's say here's the business here. Here's you, an individual employee, and you say, I'm not happy with my pay. It's much lower than people at other businesses. Well, you go, and maybe my work area is unsafe and needs to be repaired urgently. Now, if you're on your own, you don't have a lot of power. So your business or your employer might say, look, if you're not happy with the job, there's 1,000 other people we could hire to do it, and stop complaining or you'll be fired. So then you go, well, look, as an individual, I got a mortgage and bills to pay. I need this job, so I just have to go back to work. I just have to cop it. So that's not, you don't have a lot of power when you're an individual employee. So what sort of happened over the time, as we said, individuals on their own, not a lot of power. But what happens when all the employees of the business get together, go to the business and say the same thing? We're not happy with our pay. It's much lower than other businesses and our work area is unsafe and needs to be repaired urgently. Well, suddenly the business can't just go, I'm going to fire all of you. Okay, they can't really go, stop complaining or you'll be fired, because there's no one to do the work. So a union is kind of the concept of all these employees of the business getting together, because they can kind of say, now you can't fire all of us, the entire business will shut down and you'll go broke. So increase our pay and improve the safety of the workplace, or we'll all stop working. So now it's more of a fair fight. So now the employer might say, okay, that's reasonable, let's sit down and negotiate a solution. So now there's more of a power balance rather than a power imbalance between the business and their employees. So I guess we could summarize that and say, when there's a group of employees, they've got quite a lot of power. Now, unions are actually a little bit different to that. It's not a group of employees in one business. Employees can unite together and form a trade union, which is actually all the individual employees getting together, but it's kind of for a whole industry. So we'll say a trade union or union is an organization formed to represent and protect the rights of workers in a particular industry, and it represents a group of employees, usually from the same or a similar industry. Can be from one employer, actually. If you look at Amazon at the moment in America, Amazon's employers trying to start a union. But we'll say for our purposes, they're probably all in the same industry. And it's designed to provide each employee with greater power than if they negotiated with employees on their own. So let's take an example. You might have heard of some of these, you might not. The Construction, Forestry, Maritime, Mining and Energy Union. Often people just call it the CFMEU. That is a union to represent all employees in the building and construction, forestry, mining and energy production unions. And it has over 100,000 members, so that is a lot of power. There's a union called the Shop Distributive and Allied Employees Association. That's a fancy name. It's a bit sort of, what does that mean? That represents all the workers in the retail, fast food, and warehousing workers. Now, if you're a student at school right now and got a casual job, it's pretty likely you might be in one of these industries in retail or fast food. However, you mightn't be part of a union, but this one does have over 200,000 members. And another one is the Australian Education Union. That represents teachers in public schools, colleges, early childhood and vocational settings, so TAFE. And that's got over 190,000 members. So the union represents and protects the rights of workers, usually from a group of employees from the same or a similar industry. So here we can see this is the same industry, everyone in teaching. Over here, like this one and the CFMEU, they're similar industries. They're a little bit different. Building and construction is different to forestry and mining, but they get together because they have mutual interests. All the trade unions in Australia also then unite together further by being members of a parent trade union which combines the power of millions of workers, and that is called the Australian Council of Trade Unions. So you might see the term ACTU. And that's kind of just like union head office. So it's got the unions that we just looked at previously, but it also has the Health Services Union, the Australian Nurses Federation, the Finance Sector Union, the Firefighters Union, the Flight Attendants Union, all your professional footballers unions, they're a part of that, and hundreds more. And they're all part of kind of now when we negotiate not just as an industry, but an entire set of employees in Australia, we've got quite a bit of power when we're the ACTU. So it's not compulsory for employees to be in the trade union though for your industry, and that's why you might be going, well, I work in, say, McDonald's in fast food, I'm not in the union. Okay, and so that's because the one business may actually have some employees who are in the union and other employees who are not. So let's say you got this McDonald's restaurant in Richmond that you work at. Maybe 9 of the employees there are in the union, but then there might be 6 who aren't in the union, or it could be the other way around. But the point is, in Australia, we've got a right to association, and that means you can choose to be in a union or not to be in a union. And likewise, your employer has to respect that choice. They can't make you be in one or the other. And just the last thing for this topic is we'll say, well, what's the percentage of Australian workers in a trade union? Now, let's go back quite a ways, back to 1976. Over half of Australian workers were in a union. So every 1 in 2, basically. But now, today, we're only down at, 12, it's probably even less actually, but 10, 11, 12% of employers are in a union. And there's many reasons for that, which aren't part of our course. But yeah, it's mainly to do with there's not as many full-time jobs in sort of manufacturing and construction and so on than there used to be 50 years ago. But we don't really need to know that. What we just need to know from this topic is, what is a trade union? Who does it represent? And next thing we need to know is, what is its role? So we'll look at that in the next video.